Go ahead and call Transportation Highways Military Affairs Committee to order. Diana, would you please call roll?
Okay, Representative Berger,
Here.
Representative Nemec,
Here.
Representative Obermueller,
He's going to be here.
Representative O'Hearn,
Here.
Representative Pendergraph,
Here.
Representative Smith,
Here.
Representative Stivar,
Present.
Representative Wiley,
Here.
Chairman Brown.
Here. All right. So for those on interweb land that may be paying attention as well, just giving a little bit of a heads up to the committee that we are going to be moving through bills a little quicker than we did during the House side of things. We've had a half a session to get used to the process and move through. It's going to be the expectation that we move through at least 3 bills during a lunchtime during these 2 hours. So we'll do our best to try to keep questions limited and on topic, as well as making sure that we're moving through these in an expedient process. So with that, I'm going to turn the chairmanship over to Vice Chair O'Hearn today. He's going to be running the show. So Vice Chair O'Hearn, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, thank you. Senate File 14 is up. Wyoming National Guard Professional Malpractice Liability. I see Colonel Chris Smith is in the house for the National Guard. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am Chris Smith, the Director of the Commander's Action Group for the National Guard and also an attorney. Senate File 14 and Senate File 15, which is next on the agenda, I believe, came out of the interim as committee bills. They really clean up some issues with the statutes. Senate File 14, 2-page bill having to do with malpractice liability, the existing statute. Originally, we were just trying to address the fact that the current bill in 19-9-402, down at the bottom of the first page of the bill, talked about holding harmless the professionals in the National Guard from malpractice liability. It included attorneys and doctors of medicine. As all of you know, doctors of medicine is one type of medical profession, but there are many others. There's doctors of osteopathy, there are licensed practical nurses, there are physician assistants. During the interim, we added that there are also a number of people who are professionals that have licenses or credentials, such as architects that seem to be important to Senator Pappas, for example, civil engineers and the like. So the bill is before you, adds to the current statute about the state holding harmless and indemnifying any Wyoming National Guard member who possesses a license or credentials to practice a profession and who meets the requirements of the National Guard for the practice of the profession. And then that's on to page 2. And then further on page 2 on lines 6 and 7, it only when they're acting in the discharge of the professional's military duties. So that's the only time it applies. That's the bill in a nutshell. I will add that when you look at the existing statute, 19-9-401 has a general exemption that allows National Guard members who possess a license or credentials to practice a trade or profession in another jurisdiction don't have to meet those requirements. The whole idea here is that our professionals come from 22 different states, basically, in the National Guard. Not all the professionals, but we have members from different states. We want them to be able to come here and respond to the state's emergencies without worrying about them being subject to malpractice liability, particularly in the medical arena. The attorneys care a lot about that too. So that's what this bill does, is expand it so that the existing statute covers all of the people we currently have in our ranks. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll stand for the committee's questions.
Any questions for Mr. Smith? Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Colonel, I just want to make sure I understood you correctly, that in 401, as we're looking right above this, so we provide them the authority to come in here, practice inside the state. All we're really doing with 402 is providing them the immunity that if they do something, they cannot be sued. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, Chairman Brown, that is correct. 401 allows them to practice here without credentials from the state of Wyoming. And 402 only has to do with malpractice liability for something they did while they were working for the Guard.
Any other questions for Colonel Smith? Thank you. Any agencies want to speak about Senate Files 14? Do we have anybody for public comment online? Committee, what is your preference? Oh, come on up, Bill.
Wearing the same suit as them.
Mr. Chairman, Bill Winnie, Sublette County, 30 years active duty in the Navy. You just made a comment that piqued my interest with regard to acting or practicing while they're here, and the proviso is acting as a guardsman. In other words, carrying out their duties as a guardsman is where this would apply. And it should apply across all the professions, as Colonel Smith noted. Subject to your questions, that's all I have.
Thank you. So you're on in favor of the bill?
I'm in favor of the bill. Yes, sir.
Okay. Any questions of Bill Winnie? Seeing none? Thank you.
Second.
Moved by Obermuller or Stivar, seconded by Berger. Any amendments? Any questions? Hearing a question? Question being called. Marilyn, please call roll.
Hey, Representative Berger,
Excuse me,
Aye.
Diana.
Representative Nemec,
Aye.
Representative Obermuller, Representative O'Hearn,
Aye.
Representative Pendergraft,
Aye.
Representative Smith,
Aye.
Representative Stivar, Representative Wiley, Chairman Brown. 8 ayes, 1 no, do pass.
Anybody want to carry the bill on the floor? Seeing a lot of volunteers, I'm going to voluntold someone. Ken, would you take this on the floor? Okay, thank you. Okay, let's move on to Senate File 15. Colonel Smith, you're still in the hot seat.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate File 15, again, an interim topic in committee bill. This was brought to our attention. It has to do with leave of absence for state, county, really any municipality employees for military duty. What's not in the bill, because it doesn't change, is in section 1911-108A, we already provide, the legislature graciously provides 15 days of military leave, calendar days, in any calendar year for military members, Guard or Reserve, who are state or municipality employees to go on paid leave. What this bill deals with is 1911-108B, which allows members, if you look on the second page of the 2-page bill, to take a leave of absence, an unpaid leave of absence for military duty. The current statute says in lines 1 and 2 on page 2, who has been employed for 1 year. That's a prerequisite to being able to take leave of absence. We talked with ANI. I went through the statutes passed. No idea why that prerequisite existed. So what this bill does is remove that prerequisite so that if you use your 15 days of paid military leave as a municipal or state employee, but you have continued military duty, as our members often do, they come in, they go to basic, it's longer than 15 days, or they go to their tech school up to months, some as long as 9 months, they don't lose their job. Now, I will tell the committee, as we discuss in the interim, I personally, in my 20 years in the Guard, have never had a municipality try to fire someone for going on military duty. There's actually a federal law that would probably entangle them. But since no one could tell us a reason why this 1 year prerequisite exists in the statute, we decided we should just take it out. We're not using it. We allow people military leave. Our statute should reflect our practice. And since no one can defend a 1-year prerequisite, why have it in there? So that's what this bill does, Mr. Chairman. And I stand for the committee's questions.
Any questions for Colonel Smith? Concerning leave of absence? I have one. Is this, you mentioned you talked to ANI. Does the 1 year come into any other category of our state or federal employees?
Mr. Chairman, not that we could find.
Okay.
I won't say we spent a lot of time perusing through the statutes, but we could not find any reason for this.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Committee, what is your preference? Oh, excuse me. Any agencies want to speak about this? And any public comment? Do we have anyone online? Okay. Moved by Pendergraft, second by Stivar. Are there any amendments? Question being called. Diana, please call roll.
Can I also ask who moved the bill? Okay, thank you. Representative Berger,
Aye.
Representative Nemec,
Aye.
Representative Overmuller,
Aye.
Representative O'Hearn,
Aye.
Representative Pendergraft,
Aye.
Representative Smith,
Aye.
Representative Stivar,
Aye.
Representative Wiley, Chairman Brown.
Aye.
That's 9 ayes, do pass.
Would you like to carry this one?
No, yeah, sure.
Tony? Representative Nemec, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry you had to
Thank
come
you.
down here for 4 minutes.
I'll take it.
We
Last night in
appreciate
the
it.
Senate was a late night.
Okay, we move to Senate File 17. Off-road recreational vehicles, safety and insurance. I see YDOT coming forward. And also, okay,
And state park.
and state parks. I've seen you during the interim, but I forgot your name. Okay, who wants to lead off, Taylor or state parks?
Mr. Chairman, Taylor Rossetti, Support Services Administrator at YDOT. The committee may remember that you guys already have heard House Bill 42, which was really probably the more complicated bill related to ORV operations. However, this is kind of part 2 that's also very critical to all the projects that we talked about earlier. Really what we're doing here in Senate File 17, and I did provide an explanation for the group, so I think that's kind of a high-level overview that should hopefully help you guys understand what we're trying to do in this bill. And I'll come back to that community example again and kind of put the pieces together on the back end of this to explain why we're doing the 2 bills. Real quickly though, Mr. Chairman, just to refresh the group with what's going on in this bill, we're actually aligning the equipment requirements for vehicles that are operated with the ORV sticker underneath the state parks program for trails. And then the vehicles that are registered pursuant to the other registration statutes with an actual license plate. This has become important because the trails program is doing a good job of adding trail or roadways to the trail system. That does include some city and county roads. And as we went down that road, then it becomes some of the highways that we as the state own become maybe some impediments to getting some of these things interconnected. If you recall, in 42, we started talking about how you can get around and by the interstates. This then, by getting the equipment right, we feel like then we'd be comfortable entering into discussions with the state parks folks to actually put these pieces together. As we looked at the statutes, there were 3 areas of equipment that we needed to address just to make sure that there was some commonality. That starts on the bottom of page 1 with your horns and warning devices. And I did want to just take 1 second to explain this first section, which is lines 1 through 7 on page 2, because the other sections really do mirror it pretty well. If you look there on page or line 4 on page 2, there's a reference to 31.1.101A XVK II. And if you guys remember, if you've been around for a couple of years, this is the dirt bike statute. So in 2021, we allowed dirt bikes to be registered. Prior to that, they could not be. So that's specific to dirt bikes. 2020 and then 2021, we had to amend it. And then the new language that we're adding here is there on lines 5 and 6. And this is basically saying that the off-road recreational vehicles as defined in the entire statute, so that includes dirt bikes, it includes like four-wheelers and side-by-sides. So that statute is a little bit more broad than the one above it. So that's the reason that we have this format that are operated pursuant to 31.5.1601. And that's basically the operation of the ORVs on the roadway. So that's kind of what we're doing here. This section here on the top of the page is specific to the horn requirements. So the motorcycles, the dirt bikes will have to have a horn, and then four-wheelers and side-by-sides will have to have a horn. Moving down then lines 9 through 17, you're doing something very similar with mufflers. Then starting on line 19 and moving over to page 3, line 7, you're doing the same thing for mirrors. Much of this is actually already, I think, sitting in rules and regulations. Really what we're doing is codifying so that it's very clear that if you're operating with a sticker or with a license plate or both, the equipment is basically expected to be the same if we're on these roadways. So that's what we're trying to do in this bill. Further then, as we went down through here, we had to bring in the operation on the highways, which is 31.5.1601. All of that language on page 3 is existing language. What we actually have to modify, though, is on page 4, lines 7 to 9. And this was an addition of the insurance requirements. Normally, I think we would probably not try to put a flat dollar amount into a bill like this, because as you guys know, over time, the impact of the dollars generally are diminished. However, what we realized was due to the nature of these vehicles and the different ways that they are used, just referencing the way automobiles are insured was not adequate. So instead, what we chose to do through the interim was we looked at what the minimum liability requirements in Wyoming are, which is $25,000. And we just simply codified that here in this statute. And what that allows is if you have an ag policy or an umbrella policy or any other type of policy, as long as the limits are $25,000, that seems sufficient to cover what we were trying to achieve here. So it provides maximum opportunity for the owners and shouldn't be onerous for people to figure out how to insure these units. Continuing on through the bill. Lines 16 through 20 is adding the equipment requirements that we have in the bill earlier to this section. Again, just making that clear. So again, what we're adding there is the horn, the muffler, and the mirrors. And then moving on to the bottom of page 4 through the top of page 5, we wanted to make it very clear that this does not impact the exemptions that agricultural vehicles have. So if a rancher or a farmer happens to need to use the right of way in order to go check on irrigation between their property, they have a special exemption that's already in statute. We're simply referencing that here again to just make it clear we're not intending to impede their ability to be involved in their agricultural operations. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I believe that's the bill. I could certainly go into the what if, or I could answer questions on the bill.
I see the chairman has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Taylor, my favorite part of coming into committee when we've had crossover is guessing what in the world the other body did to our bills. So I noticed that this is engrossed. I was wondering if you might be able to provide us what the understanding of the engrossed changes were.
Mr. Chairman and Mr. Co-Chairman, or however, this is hard now. Actually, the changes on the other side were changes that we brought after continuing to work with state parks and looking at it administratively. They stayed very true to the original intent of the bill. We just actually reworked the language to ensure that it was very clear. And really what the differences was, again, at the top of page 2, where we have the dirt bike reference and then the broader reference, leaving it the way it is here was more clear than the way we had amended it originally. So they took our suggestions. It seemed very much to meet the intent of what we were trying to do through the interim.
Follow up. Representative Pendergrass.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick question for my own edification. On page 4, we cite 31.5.952, which apparently regulates horns. Does that have a minimum decibel requirement?
Mr. Rossetti.
Mr. Chairman, I'd have to look it up, but yes, I do believe it does. It's already specified in the statute.
Representative Obermuller.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I have a question about the on page 4, just kind of remind us on line 7, those changes there, proof of liability insurance. Did that pick up an extra piece regarding liability insurance, or is this all encompassing now, brand new language that requires insurance on all four-wheelers, side-by-sides? Picking up an entire class of vehicles that require liability insurance.
Mr. Rossetti?
Mr. Co-Chair and Representative Obermuller. Again, so if you register these vehicles under the current program, the insurance requirements are just like they are for an automobile. This is really talking about if you're going to use the sticker and then use them on the roadways, which is why that wording is different. So again, if these are only going to be used in a field or only in those off-road aggressive trails, those insurance requirements are not mentioned here. This is simply for the operation of those on the roadways. So again, we simplified the financial responsibility and just specified you need to have $25,000 worth of liability coverage to operate them on the roadways.
Representative Nemec.
Mr. Co-Chair, thank you. Mr. Rossetti. Question going back to the insurance. And I know we like to keep our statutes simple in Wyoming. Just a question, why didn't we just reference 319102A XI? Because we want to keep those insurance rates the same. And I can see in the future, probably about 10 years, they may rise. And we might have to change 2 statutes in the future instead of just one and reference back to one.
Mr. Rossetti?
Mr. Co-Chair and Representative Nemec. I think as we were trying to work the language that we felt most comfortable with as we went through this, we couldn't come to an agreement of how to best utilize the existing statute, which again then left us to just fall back on the $25,000 minimum liability. Again, it allows for some flexibility based on the types of policies folks can get here. And it just, that was through the interim, that was the language we settled on in order to get this bill before you.
Follow up? Any other questions for YDOT and Mr. Rossetti?
Just one, Chairman. Mr. Rossetti, I received an email from not my constituent, but a constituent of the state, and he is concerned about county roads. And it's my understanding, and I just want to make sure I understand that if you were to ride one of these vehicles already on county roads, you were required to have it licensed and or, well, you'd have to have it licensed and with the horn and everything else. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, that's where I think me and Deputy Glenn may actually have to team up on this question. So currently, if you register that vehicle and get it license plated, yes, those requirements are in existence. The county road section as it relates to the trails program is actually what we're trying to address here. And I think Deputy
And
Glenn
that's
can
where
provide
they
some insight.
intersect with each
Yep.
other, correct? Where the county road becomes part of the trail system.
Mr. Chairman, and Representative Brown, yes, or sorry, Dave Glenn, Deputy Director, Wyoming State Parks and Trails. When a city or county approaches us, we don't randomly just go in and enroll these routes or trails. They reach out to us and they say, we want these county roads, these streets enrolled in our system. Once those are enrolled, you unless we clean this bill up, you do not have to have that safety equipment. And we have that in rule, but we don't have it in statute yet.
Thank you, Mr. Glenn. One question. Enrolling, you talked about going to counties and cities. What's the enrolling process where the four-wheelers want to drive on these roads but they're public roads? So tell me a little bit about the enrolling process, please.
Mr. Chairman, if you can help me clarify, that question, when you're saying public roads, are you talking Forest Service roads or highways? Can you help define that for me?
I have a house on a road that four-wheelers want to drive in front of. Do I get any input from you guys saying, hey, you have some input and say, I don't want them or I do want them?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's very helpful. How that works is the county would come to us and say, we've done our due diligence. We would like to have these enrolled. then we do our due diligence as well, but we don't look at talking to neighbors and those types of things. It's usually through the county or the city that discussion happens before it gets to us.
Any other questions for Mr. Glenn? Anybody, any agencies? I see we have Senator Cole. Would you like to speak on this?
Mr.
Oops.
Co-Chair, real quick, if I could, I think the description that Deputy Glenn just went through and the question that you asked really kind of is illustrated here in that example that was provided. And what this is this is a community down in the southwest corner of the state. And you see there's that squiggly red line that's around it. That's the municipal boundary of this community.
We don't get to see that, just so you're aware.
Oh, it didn't come
Was
across
emailed-
good?
It was emailed to you.
Oh,
Yeah,
so they printed it
Sorry.
black and white?
Yeah.
Sorry.
we try to go cheap. here.
Okay, so there's a municipal boundary, and imagine inside that municipal boundary, that community has chosen to enroll all of their roadways into the trail program. Went through the process here and it was accepted into that trail program. So within that community with just a sticker, you can operate these vehicles within that community. Then at the top of that page, there on the left-hand half of that page, there's another road. It's blue on mine, but it's darker gray on yours. That's a county road that's also been enrolled into this trailway, this trail system. Then the difference here is there's a little bit of roadway between that municipal border and that county road that's a state highway. We have not gone to state parks to enroll this particular section of roadway. So really, within the community, you can do whatever you want. And as long as you can hovercraft up to that next roadway, you can go wherever you want that road goes. By doing this bill and getting these requirements there, we'd be pretty comfortable entering into the discussion to then possibly do our section of roadway, which then interconnects everything. And then that way, the equipment requirements are the same, whether you're registered with a license plate or a sticker, or as many of us do both. It just makes it very clear. And then you can start from your house here and ride wherever all of this network goes. That's the ultimate goal of what we're trying to achieve with the two bills this session.
Representative Berger?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. And Mr. Rossetti, whether, and I can be in from this community, I can take this with my own vehicle, but also if you decide to come into this community from out of state, let's say, and you're staying at a hotel, this also allows you with the proper licensing, the off-road vehicle sticker and the right insurance and all that, they could do that as well, correct?
Mr. Rossetti?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Berger, yes, this does open up some possibilities. There are states that will not let you register one of these vehicles.
Okay.
So if you came in with a license plate from another state, we recognize the license plate. But in another state where you can't license this, if you wanted to trailer your vehicle into the state and then buy a sticker through the state parks program, you'd be able to utilize these trails the exact same way. This is where you start opening it up to potential economic opportunity.
Representative Overmuller?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. So so under this bill, there would be a higher standard for equipment and the bells and whistles than there is in the community at this point. I mean, it sounds like the community just allows you to have the sticker on and you can drive around their streets.
Mr. Glenn?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Obermuller, this bill essentially says you have to have the same equipment that you would have to license your vehicle to be able to buy the sticker to use those streets and roads. So if you had an OHV and it's $270 million economic impact to direct annually, and we see no reason why that can't be doubled with the great work that folks in the Southwest Off-Road Trail System are doing. You get folks from our neighboring state to the west, they show up, say they can't license their vehicle there. They can buy the sticker, say, I have a horn, I have all of these things, and then they can actually access those roads.
Follow up,
That are
Mr.
enrolled.
Chairman, or Mr. Vice Chairman. But what I've heard people say is that in that community right now, a person with a sticker, not a license plate, but a sticker can drive around the roads of the town. Is that true?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Overmuller, yes, because we have it in rule, but we don't have it in statute. And that's what we're trying to do here. Let's put it in statute. We have it within our trails rules program, saying you have to have a horn, you have to have these things. But once we sat down and started working with YDOT on this, and they brought it to our attention that from a law enforcement perspective, to have it in statute is a lot cleaner. So everybody, a deputy sheriff, the city police, and other folks can actually help enforce those.
Follow
hope
up.
that
So
helps.
right now, right now, a police officer can stop a vehicle that doesn't have this equipment on it in that town?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Overmuller, that is the question. And that's why we're trying to keep this clean. We do have it in rule. We just don't have it in statute.
All right, thank
And
you.
there's been just some question on the best place to put that.
Representative Stivar?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Are these renewed yearly or were they lifetime?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Stivar annually.
Any other questions for YDOT or state parks? Director Reiner?
Yeah, Mr. Co-Chairman, members of the committee, Luke Reiner, Director YDOT. I just sitting here listening. I just wanted to double tap a couple things from the director standpoint. Because really the testimony from Mr. Rossetti and Mr. Glenn is exactly right. But the interest from YDOT, from the agency, from the director level is this, is we certainly have agreed to support the economic development across our state in terms of using these four-wheelers. And so the companion bill that you heard earlier certainly had to do with, access to the interstate. The critical importance of this, and Mr. Rossetti's picture, an illustration really demonstrates that, is that to connect all of our networks with the trail system set up by Friends of State Parks. Some of those will be on our roads, on state highways. And to facilitate the decal that the state parks is using, we need to make sure that equipment meets our safety standard, because in the end, I'm responsible for the safety of our roads, for all users of our roads. And I just don't want four-wheelers and off-road vehicles on our roads that are not safety equipped and don't have insurance. And that's what's important to me. And I think these two bills side by side really do get us there. A lot of work on the interim. And I'm happy with where they are, because they set the conditions for us to safely use the assets that we have to further the economic development of our state. And that's really, I think, from my level, why this is so important. These guys hit the details and intent right. But I just wanted to double tap that because I do see these two bills as brothers, both having to succeed, because if we don't have the safety requirements for vehicles to be on the road, I'm probably not interested in enrolling our roads as trails, because sooner or later, somebody will be hit. Today, our fatality count is 16, across our state. And sooner or later, somebody on an ORV will be involved. And that's our goal, is trying to prevent that. So that's that. I would, as a follow-up to one of the questions that was asked on how it was changed, Mr. Rossetti hit it right, but the big change from the Senate side also was the ag exemption. And for this to go forward, that was really one of those requirements that was put on, which we're certainly fine with, and certainly support statute as it goes.
Representative Stivar?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question I have is on speed limits. Are we going to lower the speed limits on some of these state roads from 55 down to 45 or 35 when ORVs are present?
Director?
Mr. Co-Chair and Representative Stiver, there's currently no minimum speed limits there, so no, we won't lower the speed limits. There's only minimum on the interstate.
Do I sense a follow-up? Anybody else for the? Yeah.
So I want to make sure that I'm understanding this correctly. Ultimately, that if you're going to be riding one of these vehicles listed underneath the bill, you need to have a horn, need to have a mirror, and it's whether or not you have the sticker or the license plate. You're gonna have the same requirements for both of those, right? So I'm okay with that, and I totally get that. What I'm coming to is, couldn't there be a solution where we could ultimately try to work this into just having one? We have a license plate, and then a portion of that license plate gets raised. The fee gets attached to that and gets moved over to state parks to assist with the trail system. Was that discussed during interim? And I apologize if it was. It just seems to me that we're bifurcating something that we could probably make a little easier to utilize between two agencies here.
Mr. Chair, Co-Chair, Mr. Chairman, we did not discuss that, and I think long-term, big picture, it is probably something as a state we could do. However, again, getting back to the fact that some states don't allow you to actually register these vehicles and put license plates on them, we actually probably have a little bit more flexibility in the way that we're doing it now, because the license plate would typically be recognized. I think the other side of this, and I believe Deputy Glenn could speak to it, is there are some people that will get the sticker that are going to be more native trail riders and are not going to be on these roadways. So that's a different group of people. This provides basically both opportunities, the way we've got it.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could add to that a little bit as well. Think of the Bighorns. There's a lot of 60-inch wide trails in the Bighorns that people trailer their vehicle up there and love to go spend time in the mountains. Their vehicle never touches pavement. And that's kind of one of the reasons of those stickers as well. So thanks.
My question was, where do the stickers go if they don't license them? Because they gotta get a state parks license, correct? Or a sticker on your off-road?
Mr. Co-Chairman, where do the stickers go? As far as on the vehicle or?
Yeah, if there's no license to put them on, like we would have in Wyoming, where would they go on the vehicle if it's not required in the state they came from?
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chairman. We kind of have very strict setups on where they go, and I'm not sure exactly where they are. Representative Berger may know, but I think it's like the front left, and it's a big square sticker. It's like not the little small registration sticker, but I believe it's in the front left of the vehicle.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Representative Obermuller. And then
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. So mirrors, let's see, mirrors, horns, the insurance policy also part of your requirement?
Director,
Mr. Co-Chairman, Representative Miller, correct.
Thank you.
Representative Berger.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. And then correct me, quick question. If you're licensed in another state, whether you're with their ORV sticker or their license plate, you bring that vehicle or that off-road vehicle to Wyoming, you have to purchase the Wyoming off-road vehicle sticker. Is
Mr.
that
Glenn?
correct?
Mr. Co-Chairman, Representative Berger, yes.
And then
Follow up. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. And when you purchase that sticker for Wyoming, the requirement is to make sure that you have a horn, all those other safety requirements now. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Berger, yes.
Last question, follow up. What if I'm only on dirt and I'm only going to take it up on those 60-inch trails? I thought there were 50-inch trails. Do I still have to have those same requirements?
Mr. Co-Chairman, Representative Berger, no. If it's an off-road and you're not going to be using it on pavement or some of these enrolled routes within cities, you can just have at it.
Perfect.
Any other questions for Mr. Glenn or White? Okay, any other state agencies? Senator Cold? Did you want to come up? I saw you raise your hand once. Chairman Dockstetter, did you want to come up and speak on the? Okay,
come on
Oh.
up, fill the chairs.
okay, yes.
Well,
Three's Company. I think that was an old movie, wasn't it? Come on up.
senators, we're just so pleased to have you in
Yes.
front of us. We're just trying to figure out what you did to this bill.
At our own peril, we rise. Mr. Vice Chair O'Hearn and members of the Transportation Committee. I just wanted to touch on one thing that I had heard, the concern about, well, just how it is implemented in a town and how that interacts with the county. It all starts from their asking their roads to be part of the state trails. So it's local control. They have the choices. They can do it or not. It's all up to them. This is an opportunity for them to enroll and interact with the state trails program for economic development. And license plates, of course, without a state people, which we're trying to, I guess, enhance here with the state trails program. Of course, the sticker is the easiest route for them to enjoy our state trails as they're extended and actually necessary, because the towns and communities have the gasoline that these folks need, the food. So it's part of a network that is believed to help economic development. Thank you for my chance to comment, and I'll stand for any questions.
Any questions for Senator Cole? Representative Overmiller.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. So the insurance piece, do you see that as problematic at all in these vehicle owners suddenly finding out when they're picked up that they needed an insurance registration?
Senator Cole.
Thank you, Vice Chair O'Hearn. Representative Mueller? No. And I can tell you, I'll report Senator Kolb's side by sides in excess of $120,000. So I keep an insurance policy on it. And I tell you, most people, they're spending 30,000 plus, and double that when you put all your things on there you might want to put on. So either they finance it, so they have to have insurance. I think the prudent thing to do is always have insurance, but I think it's just what you have to drive it on the road and participate around other vehicles. There needs to be a certain level of liability insurance in case you do crash into somebody. There has to be some recourse they have to deal with what had happened in the accident. So no, I don't think it's onerous. I think it's a rather small amount to answer the question, sir.
Any other questions for senators up here? Any other senators want to speak on this? Senator James, Senator Dockstead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you for giving us some time to talk about this. All of this originated with a series of meetings down in the Southwest, and I tried to attend all of them, starting in Uinta, going over to the Sweetwater country, and then up into South Lincoln. And soon we saw that what we had here was a regional template for business, tourism, all that goes with it. So we created this system of roads, trails, keeping in mind that for those who are cautious about the insurance question, that if you're just going to use them on the dirt, then that's fine. But we're linking up all of these communities. In fact, about a week ago, I was on a Zoom with our friends in the federal delegation, the DC delegation, looking for a better way into a national monument in Southwest Wyoming that we feel is a little underutilized. We can take these vehicles into, and we're just working out the details with them. And they'll be traveling out to the national monument as we meet with the people who run that monument, because we see a way to bring tourism with these vehicles. The people who ride these, many of you have seen, they're not your little vehicle anymore. They're big. The investment was just noted, the kind of money that goes into these. These are folks that have the discretional funds. They just don't dump them out of the back of the pickup. They bring them in an enclosed trailer, and they make a week of it, going out and traveling around and sightseeing. And that's what we're trying to do with this legislation. Some others is put everything in place to create a regional template and bring these people into our area in the Southwest Wyoming, get it figured out, and then we turn to the rest of the state and say to them, here's a regional template. This is how you can do it. This is how it works. And this lays the groundwork for it. We see an opportunity to improve the income of our communities, not just the Southwest, but if we take this template out to the rest of the state, improve our lodging facilities, our eating establishments, and we take people to see all that's great about Wyoming, including the national monument, as we work with our friends at the federal level. And that's what this is trying to do. In the Senate, we felt strong about the ag exemption, wanted our producers and those folks working the farms to make sure that they didn't have a distraction, they could still go do their work. We could set this up and create a regional concept for business. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee.
Any questions for Chairman Dockstetter? Maybe? Senator James Jones, would you like to speak on it?
Co-chairman. I just want to say this is an important puzzle piece for the tourism and the side-by-side industry over in Southwest Wyoming. I've been able to be on a collaborative ride with SWAT, Sheriff's Department from Uinta County, Fremont County, Sweetwater County. This past spring, we took one, and I think we're hoping to plan another one. So if any of you are interested, please let me know. But the tourism dollars could be tremendous, and we are definitely for this.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay. Thank you, Senators. Yes.
Appreciate it. Chairman and committee, appreciate it.
Anybody for public comment? Mr. Winnie, come up.
Yes, sir, Mr. Co-Chairman Bill Winnie, Sublette County, Bondurant area specifically. I have a Polaris Ranger side by side with crew arranging both wheels and tracks on it. Use it a lot for just transportation on state highways and so on, and other things like you've heard discussed. The economic impact we're talking about here is significant. And I can tell you, for me being out and about in the Bondurant area, there's a lot of people doing this kind of stuff. Mine is roadable, license plated, insurance, all of those things. And there are a set of requirements that they kind of went over to get a state license plate. But part of this is also aimed at people coming into the state from other states with different requirements and just making it easy for them to spend money. Subject to your questions. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Winnie? Thank you.
Chairman, you were chairman of this committee, were you not?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chair. No, I was chairman of corporations.
Corporations. Okay. Well, welcome back.
Thank you. I'm Pete Illaway, and I represent the weed and pest districts. I think the agricultural exemption is very good. Although I think the weed and pest districts that do spray alongside the highways probably follow everything that is in the bill. I know they've worked with Taylor and with Luke, but I just wanted to make sure that you knew that the weed and pest districts were also involved in using ORVs and all kinds of four-wheelers. And I will make sure that when this bill does pass, that they have the bill in front of them so that they can make sure that they are legal. So.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Illaway? Okay, thank you, sir. Anybody else? Ms. Wilkinson.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Catherine Wilkinson here on behalf of American Property Casualty Insurance Association. Neutral on the bill, was not going to speak today, but there were a lot of insurance questions, so I just wanted to address that. Our concerns were addressed during the interim while this was worked. We were opposed to the original version of the way that it was cited to insurance requiring them. They were linking them to federal statutes, safety statutes that ORVs follow kind of a different guideline. They have the federal statutes have different crash worthiness like guidelines that are required that are linked to the minimal liability of insurance. So we are neutral on the bill as currently written with the minimum liability because the ORVs are insured different ways through auto policies, through home policies. And we did not want anything that specific in statute as to how someone would choose or not choose to insure their ORVs. So just wanted to share that information of we are happy and neutral with where the bill is right now on insurance and would stand for any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Representative Overmuller.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Just curious about how your industry views the ag exemption.
Mr. Chairman, I don't have any feedback for you. I'd be happy to reach out to my clients, but I would assume that there's not any issue with that as it currently exists.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from Ms. Wilkinson? Seeing none? Anybody else want to speak on it? Do we have anybody online, Diana? Okay. Committee,
Move the bill.
moved by Berger, second by Stivar. Are there any amendments? Page 1. Page 2, mufflers and mirrors. 3. Page 4. No amendments? Question being called. Diana, please call for roll.
Okay, Representative Berger,
Aye.
Representative Nemec,
Aye.
Representative Obermueller. Representative O'Hearn,
Aye.
Representative Pendergraft,
Aye.
Representative Smith,
Aye.
Representative Stivar,
Aye.
Representative Wiley,
Aye.
Chairman Brown.
Aye.
That's 9 ayes, do pass.
Thank you. Representative Berger, would you like to carry this on the floor?
I would love to carry this on the floor and I would love any help from anyone to help Representative Berger convince Mrs. Berger to buy a brand new side by side. Cause I'm going.
Yeah.
For you. Director, just to take a point of privilege here, please make sure you take our committee's sincere wishes for the trooper that was injured. Just saw the news break right before we came down here, so please send the committees. I saw that. So we may need to be talking about strengthening our move over law. So thank you, Vice Chairman O'Hearn, for helping me out. Again, committee, as we move through this, I'll probably be asking each one of you to kind of get the feel for the reins and taking the reins for the committee, as long as we've got the anticipation of moving through them like this. I will probably never do this because we're out of here in less than an hour. So with that, we are adjourned.